the devil of Edinburgh Castle, in the heart of colonial Jamaica, where dense jungles whisper secrets and the sea swallows the guilty and innocent alike, a fortress looms atop a hill, Edinburgh Castle. Once a symbol of prestige, it has become a place of vanished travelers and blood-soaked rumors. This is the tale of Lewis Hutchinson, the island's most feared and enigmatic figure, and the nightmare that unfolded when two unsuspecting men sought shelter within his walls. Based on true fragments of history, this story blends Gothic horror and Caribbean folklore into a chilling legend of madness, cruelty, and a hunger that death cannot silence. Jamaica, 1773. The road, if it could be called that, was a wound carved into the belly of the jungle, slick with mud and rank with decay. Each sodden step of the horses seemed to draw the riders deeper into something ancient and watchful, a place that remembered a time before men. Vines hung thick as ropes, swaying in the breathless air, brushing against sleeves and faces like the fingers of the dead. From the gloom came the hoots of owls, the guttural croaks of unseen toads, the sharp, nervous chatter of crickets, sounds that echoed against the trees like mocking laughter, sudden and shrill. Overhead, the branches knitted into a vault of shadows, a tunnel that swallowed what little moonlight reached this forsaken place, growing heavier, closer, with every weary mile. Timothy Cronin rode at the fore, spine straight as a rod, posture betraying the schoolmaster within him. Yet his knuckles whitened on the reins, and sweat soaked the lining of his powdered wig, trickling down the nape of his neck to mingle with the damp of his collar. The air clung to him like wet linen, heavy with the scent of rot and something sweeter, fouler, a perfume of unseen blossoms blooming in darkness. The intensity of the lady of the night, the blooming jasmine, permeated the air with a chilling scent, sweet and suffocating, as if death itself had taken root among the blossoms. He kept his gaze fixed ahead, forcing thoughts of London lecture halls and well-swept parlors from his mind, but they surfaced unbidden, cruel in their comfort. Cronin's lantern swayed with each step, casting sharp, angular shadows that leapt ahead of him, like specters fleeing the flame. The path twisted beneath the flickering light. Every vine, a snake, every gnarled root, a grasping hand. Shapes emerged and vanished, unnamed, uneasy, born of firelight and fear. The lantern revealed not safety, but judgment, as if the jungle itself awaited illumination, only to be condemned by it. Behind him, William Lickley mumbled prayers under his breath, the rhythm of his words broken and uncertain. A small man, narrow-shouldered and taut as drawn wire, his eyes darted ceaselessly from shadow to shadow, tracking movements no sane man wished to see. In his lap, he clutched a satchel tied with fraying twine. Within lay parchment, a bottle of ink thickened by the heat, and a small wooden cross that had once hung above his mother's bed. His thumb worried the shape of it through the canvas, over and over, as if by touch alone he could conjure protection. The jungle pressed closer, breathing around them, watching. As they passed the sugarcane fields, the horses snorted and reared, their frightened cries cutting the thick air. A chill crept over the men, raising the hairs on their necks, as if the restless spirits of the slaves who had poured out their blood, sweat and tears beneath the lash of cruel masters still haunted the earth, whispering their anguish through the rustling cane and shifting shadows. Somewhere in the distance, a crack of wood, a branch breaking. Both men froze, horses shifting beneath them, ears pricked and flanks shivering. Silence swelled thick as mud, swallowing the insect song. Then softly, from the green murk ahead, a whisper. Or was it merely the sigh of the wind through the vines? Overhead, the clouds roiled like bruises, stained violet and gray by the moon's faltering light. Thunder murmured in the east, low and distant, like the growl of something vast and unseen. The storm gathered on the horizon, its heavy breath pressing down upon them, making the very air feel thick and slow, like wading through oil. Soon the sharp edge of English voices cut through the tense, heavy air. "Tim," Lickley said softly, leaning close, as though the forest itself might be listening, eager to catch their words. "Have you ever heard the stories of Edinburgh Castle?" Cronin glanced back over his shoulder, rain-speckled wig askew, eyes shadowed by doubt he would not voice. "Rumors, Will. Old tales and island superstition. Hutchinson is a man of science, a doctor, a gentleman, with slaves, a title, and a library finer than any in Kingston. The folk here spin ghosts and goblins to fill the gaps of what they can't understand." Lickley shifted in the saddle, his unease writ plain in the clench of his jaw and the restless flick of his eyes toward the tree line. Still, men go missing, drovers, sailors. A priest once, they say, all bound west, always near that hill. Cronin's grip tightened on the reins, leather creaking in his fist. "The forest is vast," he said, sharper than he meant. "A man could wander, fall, be swallowed by this place, and never be found." Silence bloomed between them, heavy as the coming rain. Cronin exhaled, softening. "We've no choice, Will. The storm's near, and we've miles yet to Spanish Town." Behind them, in the hush between the thunder's breath, the jungle stirred. A whisper of leaves, a rustle low and close, as if something unseen crept just beyond the edge of sight. He nodded ahead, toward the dark shape that loomed like the silhouette of a broken hill. There stood Edinburgh Castle. Its towers jutted against the bruised sky, crooked and leaning, like the teeth of some vast and decaying jaw. The stone was slick with dampness, as black as pitch, choked with creeping vines that slithered up the walls, thick as ropes, as if the jungle itself sought to drag the castle down into the earth. The windows loomed dark and eerie, shadowed and still, reflecting ghostly images in their glass. Above the arched gate, a single lantern burned weakly, flickering like a watchful eye. As they drew nearer to the castle, a cold dread settled over them like a suffocating fog. An ominous presence hung heavy in the air, sending involuntary shivers down their spines. The lantern flickered violently before dying completely, plunging them into near-total darkness, lit only by the pale glow of the moon. The wind whispered through the skeletal branches, carrying a faint, guttural growl that seemed to rise from the very shadows themselves. Their horses' steady trots faltered, hooves hesitant against the soft earth, swallowed by the heavy silence that choked the night, thick and suffocating, pressing in like the darkness itself. But what made Cronin's spine prickle wasn't the castle's menacing shape, nor its ghosting shadows. It was the gates. The great iron gates hung wide, yawning open as though in welcome, or invitation, or hunger, as if they had been left ajar for him, for them. A flicker of movement stirred behind the archway, brief, uncertain. The lantern light trembled, casting long and quivering shadows. Cronin swallowed, forcing iron into his voice. "Oh there," he called, sitting straighter in the saddle. "Dr. Hutchinson, we seek shelter." His words hung in the thick air, unanswered, fading into the vast quiet that pressed from all sides. Behind him, Lickley made the sign of the cross. Silence followed, the kind that pressed against the ears, thick and watchful, as if the very jungle held its breath. Then a figure emerged. He stepped into the moonlight like a corpse stirring from a long, fevered dream. Tall and gaunt, he stood with bones sharp beneath the hang of a worn frock coat. The lace at his cuffs, yellowed with age, trembled with each movement. His wig sat askew, the powdered hair clumped and streaked with sweat from the heat. But it was his eyes that held the gaze, that froze the blood, glassy and unblinking, glinting like wet marbles, too bright, too still, too utterly vacant. "Good evening, gentlemen," came the Scottish accent, smooth as aged whiskey, but laced with a chilling undertone. "You travel late." Dr. Hutchinson, Cronin asked, though the answer was clear as the chill that gripped his spine. The figure inclined his head with a slow, deliberate nod. Indeed, you seek refuge, I presume, a bed, a meal. If you would permit us, Cronin said cautiously. We mean no imposition. The forest is no place for honest men, Hutchinson finished with a thin, curling smile that didn't reach those lifeless eyes. He stepped aside and pushed the iron gate wide with a creak that echoed like a warning. Come, he said. The house has been quiet of late. It will be refreshing to have company again. Lickley froze in his saddle, hands clutching the satchel, eyes wide with dread. The horses reared, hooves striking the air, their panicked knees threatening to unseat the riders. With effort, the men managed to wrestle them under control and dismount. Still, the animals snorted and shied, tossing their heads as if sounding warnings, refusing to cross the threshold. The men coaxed and dragged them through the gaping gate, but the horses balked, muscles trembling, eyes rolling white with fear. Leaving the trembling horses tethered beneath a twisted tree, the men steeled themselves and followed in Hutchinson's shadow, drawn unwillingly toward the castle's gaping maw. The castle smelled not merely of mold and decay, but something far fouler, sickly sweet and metallic, like the scent of meat long rotted, mingled with the sharp tang of old blood. It hung heavy in the air, thick and clinging, coating the tongue and curling in the back of the throat. Yet Cronin, ever the rationalist, gave a stiff, polite bow to the empty hall and stepped inside, his footsteps echoing softly against the stone floor. Lickley hesitated just a moment longer, eyes darting to the dark jungle beyond the open doorway. Then with a nervous swallow, he followed, his hand tightening on the worn satchel. The gates groaned and creaked shut behind them, sealing the world outside. They entered into the shadow. The great hall yawned before them, cavernous and ancient. Though a fire blazed in the hearth, its feeble glow barely touched the vast darkness that pooled in the corners and stretched along the high, blackened walls. The flickering flames cast monstrous silhouettes, twisting antlers, flayed hides stretched taut, and instruments of a grim and terrible purpose best left unspoken. Above, the heavy beams sagged, black with soot and draped with ropes, chains, and rusted hooks that swung faintly with the draft. Lickley shuddered, a low sound lost in the cavernous room. Cronin said nothing, but his jaw clenched tight, his eyes narrowing as he took in the unsettling scene. Rows of gleaming weapons lined the walls, pistols with pearl grips, sabers curved like crescent moons, and surgical blades polished to a mirror sheen that caught the firelight and fractured it into 1,000 shards. Above the fireplace, mounted like a grim shrine, hung dozens of pocket watches, each ticking softly in the heavy silence. Some were cracked, their faces spiderwebbed with fractures. Others still gleamed with gold and enamel. They ticked out of sync, a fractured chorus, like a heartbeat struggling on the brink of death. Cronin stared, unease creeping up his spine. Quite a collection. Hutchinson moved to the mantel with a deliberate grace, fingers trailing over a silver case. He turned it over in his palm, handling it like a lover might a precious keepsake. Slow, reverent, chilling. Trophies, Hutchinson murmured, voice low and dark, each one taken from a guest, like you. Cronin stared at the watches, unease surging like bile. He tried to laugh, but the sound died in his throat. This is some kind of joke? Hutchinson's smile didn't waver. Do you hear it? Cronin turned. The fire sputtered. The room seemed to inhale. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, dragging. The sound was soft but unmistakable. Something or someone moving just beyond the firelight's reach. The hairs on the back of Cronin's neck rose as a cold draft whispered through the hall, carrying the scent of rot and old iron. Two men emerged from the gloom, thick-necked and hard-eyed. Their coats reeked of sweat and smoke. One cradled a musket, the other gripped a rusted cutlass, blade chipped and stained. Their eyes were dull, lifeless, but their mouths twisted into cruel, hungry grins. "James Walker," Hutchinson said, voice smooth and detached, gesturing with a lazy hand. "And Mr. Maddox, fine stewards of my estate." Walker's grin widened, teeth gleaming in the firelight. "Fresh meat, Doctor." Lickley stumbled backwards, desperate hands raised. "What is this? We're honest men. We've done nothing." Bang! The musket roared. Lickley jolted as if struck by lightning. For a stunned heartbeat, he stood, blinking, the world slowing and shifting around him. Then the blood came, hot, fast, dark. It spilled over his hands, soaking his shirt and dripping onto the stone floor like a brutal, bleeding shadow. Lickley dropped with a thud, limbs twitching spasmodically, the spreading crimson pooling like spilt ink across the cold stone floor. Cronin screamed, the sound raw and desperate. He turned to flee, only to be seized by Maddox's iron grip. Before he could react, Walker's musket butt crashed down on his temple with bone-shattering force. The firelight blurred and fractured. Blood thundered in his ears. Through the ringing and haze, Hutchinson's voice slipped like silk, soft and cruel. Ah, such fine music when the lungs begin to fail. Then came the cold kiss of iron. Stock snapped shut around Cronin's neck and wrist, biting into flesh. A rope, thick and coarse, was drawn down from a beam above the hearth, swinging with a slow, deliberate rhythm. As the firelight flickered across the silver watches, the heavy curtains stirred, parting like the veil of death itself. 3 women emerged from the shadows, ethereal and haunting, like ghosts risen from velvet tombs. Dorcas Maddox came first, broad-shouldered and brutal, her heavy frame draped in a dress stained at the hem with old dried smears of brown. A butcher's apron was tied tightly around her waist, its pockets bulging with unseen tools. Her eyes gleamed with a feral mischief as she dragged a wooden chair across the stone floor, the scrape ringing like a summons. She planted herself before the fire, settling into the seat as if attending a twisted theater, her grin wide and hungry. Miss Susanna Cole followed, gliding like a spectre in a gown of once lustrous silk, now dulled and threadbare with age. She held a goblet of wine in one delicate hand, her movements measured and precise, the very picture of refinement. Her face was pale, an expression carved from stone, eyes distant and unfocused, as if watching a cruel performance unfolding on a stage only she could see. The third lingered in the shadows, hesitant and trembling. Miss Elizabeth Thomas clutched a pocket watch close to her chest, Cronin's watch, though he could barely see it through his swollen, bleary gaze. Her expression flickered between awe and terror, caught in the throes of some silent, tormenting struggle within. "He squeaks like a rat," Dorcas said, voice rough and amused, her eyes fixed on Cronin's futile struggles against the unforgiving iron stocks. "You mustn't resist," Susanna murmured, her voice smooth and cold, like velvet wrapped around shards of broken glass. "The doctor likes the music of pain." Walker tugged the rope slowly, deliberately and cruelly. Not enough to hang Cronin, but just enough to drag out the strangled gasps. Cronin's face darkened to the color of bruised plum. His eyes bulged, wild and desperate. Spittle foamed at the corner of his mouth as he struggled for breath. Hutchinson clapped softly, a slow, mocking applause. "He sings well. Shall we let him reach the high note?" "Please," Elizabeth's voice broke through the silence, trembling with raw fear. "Please. He's not like the others." Dorcas snapped her fingers sharply. "Take her away." From the shadows, a pair of unseen hands seized Elizabeth by the shoulders, dragging her back into the gloom. Her protest faded into the darkness. Then, a noise, muffled at first, but growing louder. boots pounding against stone, a voice shouting commands, the crack of a musket splitting the stale air. The heavy door to the great hall shattered inward with a thunderous crash, splinters flying. Sergeant Ralph Graham stormed into the hall, pistol drawn, red coat dusty and torn from the jungle's grasp. Behind him came 3 Marines, bayonets fixed and gleaming, their faces set hard with purpose. By order of His Majesty, Lewis Hutchinson, you are under arrest for the crimes of murder, torture, and treason. Hutchinson spun, fury twisting his features into a mask of rage. This is my house, my kingdom. You trespass in a realm of my making. He lunged toward the wall, snatching a rifle from the weapon rack in desperate haste. Ralph fired. The shot cracked through the thick air, striking Hutchinson in the shoulder. He staggered, crashing through the heavy drapery and vanishing into a shadowed corridor. Go! Ralph barked. 2 Marines tore after him without hesitation. Walker lunged at a soldier but was gunned down at point-blank range. Maddox charged another and was met by cold steel, skewered on a bayonet. Blood sprayed across the firelit stone floor in a cruel arc. Ralph dropped the crone inside, fumbling with the iron lock. Easy, man. You're safe now. Cronin sagged into his arms, gasping, barely conscious. Elizabeth appeared beside them, freed from her captors, tears glinting in the firelight as she helped support Cronin's weight. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know. Above them, the rope swung gently from the beam, rocking like a pendulum, mourning the horrors it had borne witness to. Meanwhile, Hutchinson fled through narrow, twisting passages, bleeding and breathless. The tunnels, carved long ago by terrified hands, bore silent witness to his past cruelties. His blood marked the stones behind him, dark trails smeared across the damp rock. Outside, the jungle closed in, thick, suffocating, alive with whispers. Thunder split the sky, the furious drumbeat of an approaching storm. Hutchinson slipped into the wild, evading capture for days, but fate turned against him. South of the castle, near Old Harbor, British patrols caught sight of him. He shot and wounded a pursuing soldier, John Callender, before bolting toward the cove, where a French sloop waited, its torches flickering wildly in the storm-dark night, signaling desperate urgency. But the sea betrayed him. Out of the mist loomed the gray hulks of British Royal Navy ships, blocking every escape, closing in like vultures scenting the kill. Marines landed on the beach, sabers drawn, voices sharp with command. Surrender! Hutchinson sank to his knees, soaked in his own blood, face contorted in a rictus of fury and despair. From the shadows, Admiral Rodney stepped forward, voice low and cutting through the thunder. Do you fear death now, Doctor? Hutchinson laughed, a dry, bitter sound, hollow as the grave. The trial in Spanish Town, 1773. The courtroom was packed wall to wall. The stench of sweat and fear clung to every timber, thick and suffocating. Witnesses took the stand. Survivors, slaves, widows, each voice trembling but resolute. One by one they recounted their horrors. Children torn, screaming from their mothers. Slaves forced to scrub floors stained with human blood. A missionary was boiled alive in molasses. A trembling maid whispered, "He made us applaud," she whispered, eyes wide and distant. "Made us clap while he cut." Her voice faltered, but the words spilt forth, trembling. He would shoot lone travelers, then drink from their wounds, as if their blood fed him. Afterwards, he'd carve them apart, piece by piece, while we watched. And when he was finished, we, his slaves, were ordered to carry the remains, to toss them beneath the cotton trees, or down the sinkhole, for the animals to feast on. But the slaves' testimonies told of more than murder. They spoke of torment, the beatings, the starvation, the iron collars that tore their skin, of nights locked in darkness beneath the castle, where screams echoed until dawn. Their suffering was unending, their lives nothing more than tools for Hutchinson's cruelty. To him, They were not servants. They were witnesses, and he made certain they could never forget. The evidence was overwhelming. Blood-stained garments, chains rusted with age, sacks filled with gold teeth, 43 pocket watches, each still ticking, a grim testament. Walker and Maddox were hanged the morning after sentencing. Dorcas Maddox and Susanna Cole vanished into shadow. Some whispered they escaped to Haiti. Others swore they drowned in the Devil's Well. Elizabeth Thomas, pale and trembling, was spared. Cronin spoke on her behalf, his voice steady in the courtroom's hush. As for Hutchinson, he was dragged forth, still laughing. The gallows in Spanish Town Square stood taller than ever, a grim monument meant for all to see. Hutchinson smiled as the noose was fitted, eyes scanning the crowd, searching for anyone who still feared him. "You'll forget me," he said, voice cold and sure, "but the earth won't. My sinkhole will always hunger." The trapdoor fell, the ropes snapped taut. Hanged, his body twisted once, twice. Then still, the jungle never reclaimed Edinburgh Castle, but it did not forget. At the edge of the cotton trees, where Hutchinson's sinkhole yawns like a grave, strange things still stir. Watches tick in the dark, footsteps echo where no one walks, and sometimes, only at midnight, a thin voice rises from the pit. Another guest, another trophy, another time. Power unrestrained by conscience breeds evil. No title, education, or civilized appearance can conceal the monster within. The devil of Edinburgh Castle serves as a reminder that evil often wears the face of respectability, and that the silence of the fearful nourishes its hunger. Justice may arrive late, but its footsteps are relentless. If you enjoyed the story, show some love. Like, comment, and subscribe to Word, Sound, and Story, where Troy McKenzie transforms real-life experiences into meaningful, dramatic, and entertaining tales.